Week in review, 11/14/2022. Next month, December 3rd, it's a Saturday. I think December 3rd is a Saturday. We are partnering with Spartan Race to do an event with them. Well, they're running the event, but we're allowing affiliates to come do it for free. Affiliate owners and their members, as many as want to come, in San Francisco at the stadium that the San Francisco Giants play in. So if you're in the Bay Area, we sent out an email today to Bay Area affiliates and kind of Northern California affiliates. If you guys want to come check out a Spartan Race and have done one before or have never done one, you got information on how to sign up for the race next month. I've never done a Spartan Race. I'm going to do this one. I think the format sounds pretty cool, doing it inside of a stadium. So I'm excited about that. I called out Don and said, hey, I'm going to crush you at this. So he's going to do it too. So if you want to come out, meet us, race against us, sign up for the Spartan Race on December 3rd in San Francisco. Also, if you're an affiliate and you're from out of the area who got the email today about the information, email me, dave@crossfit.com, and I'll forward you the link if you want to come from Southern California, from Nevada, or from wherever to do this event. Let me know, and I'll make sure you get the information to register for free. A couple things. The nutrition discussion from last week, a lot of positive feedback on that. One thing I do want to say is I don't, even though I'm acknowledging that the athletes are skewing towards a really high carb diet for their performance, I still don't think that's optimal, or enough athletes have experimented with lower carb and performance at this stage in the game, at this era in the development of the athletes. For sure, earlier on, there were a lot of athletes who experimented with lower carb diets and performed well even at the games with not as many carbohydrates as these guys are. There's just been a transition or a trend to go in the other direction. And 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, the programming, the weights were heavier, the programming wasn't so different in terms of volume, probably very similar, maybe a little more volume now. But my point with that is, even when there were athletes who were performing at a high level at the games with a lower carbohydrate prescription, there were still athletes, those athletes still could, if they were relevant and still as fit as they were then, could still be competing in this era and probably fueling the same way. So I'm acknowledging that they do it, but I'm not endorsing it or saying I think it's the right path. I think there needs to be more experimentation, especially reducing carbohydrate consumption and increasing fat from some of the athletes. Someone commented in the thread that Haley Adams once talked about eating over 500 grams a day. That's a lot. So it'd be interesting to see what would happen if there were some tweaks to that. Next thing I want to talk about is programming. Not necessarily programming at the games, but this kind of notion of the best programming, or the best programmers out there, or the top programming, or this is the one way. And I don't believe in that. It's so subjective. Programming is, the art is in the programming, right? I mean, that's the art is in the science is in the explanation, the art is in the programming, the magic is in the movements. I mean, the art is in the programming. To go back to that phrase, and there's not a fourth part to that. To go back to that phrase, this whole discussion about programming could be summed up in the art is in the programming. And there's such an art to it, and combine that with the magic is in the movements. So that's where the magic is in the movements and the methodology and the format and the structure of the workouts and the intensity. And that's what's getting people the results. The programming, don't get me wrong, there could be programming that's less than ideal, or call it poor programming, especially if they're not hitting the tenets of CrossFit, constantly varied, hitting in that constant varied piece, hitting different time domains, short, medium, long, hitting different movements, hitting different loading, light, medium, heavy, doing everything we do, running, jumping, swimming, sprinting, all the lifts. If you're mixing them all up, varying the time domains, varying the loads, and combining them in our classic formats, the chances of you messing up the programming is probably pretty low. Especially so, talking specifically for, let's say, the average gym goer, or just someone who's training in CrossFit, who's new to CrossFit, or who doesn't have a lot of experience in training, or even just in CrossFit, their journey, 1-2 years into it. The programming for people, especially in the initial stages, especially if it's meeting our prescription, is probably not going to be the issue for people not progressing or results not or them not seeing results. Now, when you take it to higher levels and when you start talking about more specialized athletes or more competitive athletes, when I say specialized, I mean people who maybe have a specific pursuit that they're using CrossFit for or training for. They might be able to tweak their programming to meet that specific goal, and or the athletes who, yes, your average gym programming might not be ideal or enough for them, so they need to essentially look for more volume and for more options, and they get a little pickier about their programming. And really, those athletes, the best thing the higher level athletes can do with their programming is fundamentally target their weaknesses in a really aggressive way. So to use Haley Adams as an example, since we talked about her with nutrition, she's typically not known for being as strong as the rest of the girls. So, and I imagine she is now, but someone like Haley really focusing on strength in her program is probably way more needed or more beneficial, or the type of programming she should look for. So if she were to go and look for programming from someone like Hinshaw that was really endurance based, it's probably the wrong pursuit for someone like her. But anyways, we're not talking about the athletes. Backing up and talking about programming for the average individual, I think it's really hard to not have routine or a set of programming that is, someone can say, oh, this isn't for me. That being said, I do think some of the volume that all of everything I was just talking about was more traditional core programming, old school CrossFit programming is what I'm referring to. There's another direction that's been around for a long time that programming for box owners and for affiliates has skewed towards, and and those who've been around long enough will know what I'm going to talk about. That's the heavy days with, call it the metcon, on the same day. I feel like that kind of thematically came about after the games became so popular, and the volume started increasing so much, and people started seeing how they trained, and people then started wanting to do what they did. For the average gym, having one workout a day over the course of each day, over the span of a given section of programming, is more than enough. What we risk when we combine strength and the workout in 1 hour block is a few things. One, I think burnout. It's really hard for people to go to do the heavy stuff and a CrossFit workout in the same day. Two, also not being able to give the attention that each one of those deserves. Meaning that if you have a heavy day and it's combined then later in that day with Helen, which one are you going to give your max intensity to? Or maybe you're going to do both at lower intensity, or maybe you're going to try to do both at really high intensity. There are people and there are athletes who in their journey with CrossFit can can definitely handle that. Call it this more 5, 6, 7 years down the road athlete, not really like games, but they not like that competitive, but they have a solid foundation underneath them. They can handle 2 or 3 things in an hour class and be fine. But for the majority of CrossFitters, especially new CrossFitters, asking that much of them in an hour can lead to burnout, can lead to lack of intensity in certain efforts, and I don't think is the right expression of programming for an hour block in a CrossFit gym. That being said, heavy day in an hour, you'll hear people say, well, that's not enough. Well, there's got to be a lot of attention given to what happens before and after that. So let's say you're going to lift for, let's say you're going to do 5 sets of 3 deadlift, and you're going to take 15, 20 minutes to do that. Well, that leaves 20 minutes on either end, or 30 minutes in the beginning and 10 minutes at the end. And what do you do with that time? Well, you coach and you warm up athletes, and you really take the time to prep for the movement, in this case, the deadlift. So there's nothing to be said that even in a day like that, a warm-up for something like that could not include, 5 rounds of Cindy at pretty light effort, even after you've warmed up the air squat, the pull-up, and the push-up with the due attention that those need, especially for a newer athlete. Then you warm up, or then you go through, let's say, 5 rounds of Cindy. And then from there, you start, and again, 5 rounds of Cindy as a warm-up, not as a workout. Then you start prepping for the deadlift and warming up that movement and going through all the necessary light lifts, stretches, mobility, whatever you need to do to prep for the deadlift. And then when it comes down to that actual effort, lifting heavy, and knowing that's all you're going to do for the day, and being able to give that your focus. And then after that, having some sort of cool down aspect. On the flip side, let's just say it's just a traditional let's say it's Helen. The Helen's an easy one to program for, essentially, because, so let's say it's a 15-minute workout, 10 minutes for people who are fast, sub 10 minutes for people who are fast. You spend a good 20, 30 minutes warming up and movement prep for that. And again, even like that Cindy example, you could still use Cindy to prep, put some other stretches before, maybe some other stretches afterwards, get everything flowing, and then do movement prep specific to Helen. Work on the kettlebell swing, work on the pull-ups. Maybe you teach people who don't have the butterfly how to butterfly, and those who do have the butterfly, maybe you get them to work on chest to bar butterfly. Anyway, my point being there, when I say I don't think there's poor or bad programming, or that there's one ideal programming, I am saying that in relation to more traditional CrossFit programming with 1 workout a day. I know a lot of affiliates and a lot of people do 2 a day, and there are going to be those who disagree with me, and that's fine. That's the strength of this program, and that's the strength of the affiliate model, is that they are able to do that, and a lot of them are able to have results doing that. And ultimately, what should be the success of anyone's program, that style with 2 a day or 1 a day, is if it's increasing work capacity across broad, time, and modal domains. On a very core CrossFit level, that's how we measure programming. Anything that's contributing to that, or any blend of exercises, if you're increasing your work capacity across broad, time, and modal domains, aka getting fitter, if you're getting fitter and you're seeing results, your program is working for you. And I will acknowledge there are plenty of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of examples of people using the 2 a day method, and they're increasing work capacity across broad, time, and modal domains, and changing people's lives. So I do agree. Well, let me say not agree. I do acknowledge that there are positive results seen from that programming. But even through my own experience, 1 is enough for me and a lot of the people I know who've been doing CrossFit for a very long time. And maybe, honestly, if you were to take another perspective, you see a lot of people do come in and out of CrossFit and then go experiment with other things. I can contend, with no evidence to support this, maybe some of the people leaving have just been burned out from doing too much and not actually getting back to our core and just having 1 good session. There are, again, to go back to this point too, there are still people who eventually in their path might want to do more or can handle more, and then that's fine too. And there's plenty of expressions and outlets for people who want to do more in an hour or whatnot. Now, when I'll say this, tie it back to nutrition. Typically, when even athletes, but games level athletes, but typically when CrossFitters stop seeing results or stop progressing, they do look towards their programming or want to fault the programming. But in reality, the first place, if you're not seeing the results you're looking for, you should look, is your nutrition. And talk to your CrossFit coach or read some of our resources via the website or some of the stuff we put out over the past couple decades, and educate yourself on nutrition, and then start actually measuring what you're eating, and then start tweaking the measurements. And very likely you can make performances via nutrition rather than changing programming and taking it in a different direction. So the programming stuff, there's a lot more to be said about all of this, but I think on a surface level, I just wanted to address that this idea of perfect programming or chasing something else out there isn't necessarily, since the magic is in the movements and the art is in the programming, it's not. The magic is in the movements, meaning that's where all of the essence of it is coming from the functional movements. The programming is important, but if it's 21-15-9 thrusters, pull-ups, and over here it's 9-15-21 pull-ups, thrusters, at the end of the day, the stimulus you're going to get is going to be very, very similar, obviously, and probably be a good workout either way. Now, programming for events and programming for CrossFit, the games, or any competitions, that's a different beast. There's definitely, you can really analyze one of those much easier than you can analyze an average member's programming, because that programming spans over a long duration. But in an event in that format, it's compressed to a couple days, and you can really understanding what the goal of that programming, if that the goal of that programming is programming for the fittest on earth, it's pretty easy to evaluate and assess that programming to make sure it hits that. And programming at events and competitions isn't about increasing work capacity across broad and time and modal domains. It's about testing fitness. The test of testing fitness and preparing people for fitness, there's differences in the programming, although they're very similar. And some of the the preparation for fitness that you do here can be tests, and some of the tests can be here. It doesn't always. There's some things that you would do in competition that I don't think you should do a lot of in training, and there's some things you could do in training that I don't think, especially visually for the sport, look well for competition. So that was just all over the place, a little rant on some programming concepts. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks.